Chris Scalgione works in Google as a pursuit leader. Chris has a wild career journey of working in different companies. He talks about soul searching and committing to the process. In this interview, he talks about his career journey while being intentional on every step of the way. He makes it a point to manage his time effectively. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for coming for this interview.
J-Man, happy to be here. I'm joining you from our Google office here in New York City. Happy to be here and happy to start speaking with you today about some of these questions.
Google Office, that's pretty cool in New York City. Wow. So, could you please tell me your career journey and how it started and from Rutgers to where you are currently at your Google office right now?
Sure. Yeah, happy to do so. So my journey, I'll start with Rutgers, but it actually starts a little bit before Rutgers. 2 years before I joined Rutgers, I went to Brookdale Community College, and that's in Lincroft, New Jersey. I did 2 years there because out of high school, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, like most people. So I figured, let me do something a little more cost effective and go to a community school and learn a little bit more about what it is that's out there. While I was doing that, I was also involved in a part-time IT internship for a small medium business in New Jersey as well at the time. It was an engineering firm, very small, about 300 people, and they were non-technical engineers, and they needed, technical, right? They needed IT to work for them, so they needed their computers, they needed the network, they needed storage for all of the work that they do. They don't know how any of that works, which is why they have an IT team. So I joined that IT team as I was going to Brookdale. And I learned, for me, I always trace, my success back to that first internship because I learned a little bit of everything. You had to be sort of this jack of all trades, right? You had to know a little bit about the store, how storage works, and how desktops are deployed. Some may think that's entry level, but frankly, you have to know that level of detail if you're going to take it to the next level and have conversations with customers about any sort of IT scenario or solution or deployment. So it can all be kind of traced back to those early years, getting an idea of how we support organizations, big or small, with IT. So now I'll fast forward you. So I did 2 years at Brookdale while I did that internship. Then I transferred to Rutgers, where I got into the ITI program right away. That was through the Communiversity program. I don't know if that's still a thing, but 2 years at Brookdale, and then everything transferred over nice and cleanly to Rutgers. I think 95% of my credits transferred over, which was nice. And then I had 2 remaining years at Rutgers. And during that time, I went through the ITI program. I started taking more specialized courses in IT because, yes, I was doing it in that internship. And I also wanted to do more in that field. I started gravitating towards the science behind it, a little bit more about what was new and happening at the time. Right then, cloud was really starting to come alive as a trend in the industry. So I wanted to learn more about that. And so, spent 2 years there, graduated with ITI as a major. And then after that, I continued, believe it or not, I continued that internship with that small medium business and the engineering company. And I left there in 2016 to go to Accenture for 5 years. So if anyone's familiar with Accenture, they're your business consulting firm. They're like considered the biggest four firms. And I give a lot of my consulting skills that I've learned over the years to that company. So the adjustment at that time was, hey, you're servicing a small medium business of 300 people. Now you're going and traveling, physically getting on an airplane and going to a customer that you've never met before, and now you're consulting to them, right, and with them. So that was a bit of an adjustment. You're dealing with consulting, what they call business consulting skills, right? How do you take multiple opinions and get a consensus? How do you execute? How do you follow up? How do you be thoughtful and responsive? How do you manage deadlines? A lot of that, I learned from my years at Accenture, and it was very travel intensive. It wasn't the easiest with home life because you're on the road, flying out Monday morning at 6 a.m. and flying home Thursday night, and you're wondering why you're paying rent for a place that you're at 2 to 2.5 days a week. But the skills I learned in my 5 years there were critical for me to continue progressing my career. After in 20, I'm trying to think the exact year, but 5 years after I joined Accenture, I went to another company called Equinix. Equinix, you can look them up. They're probably like the best company you've never heard of. And I say that because they are literally connecting the backbone of the internet, right? So they're connecting the Verizons of the world with the AT&Ts of the world. You sending an email to your grandmother, you don't really know or care who her internet service provider is. It just all connects, right?
Yeah.
So these are the kind of the best kept secret in the industry. This Equinix, I still look back on those days as a fond, just a real kind of cool company to work for. And I was doing traditional sales, direct sales at that point. So basically, my consumption now was based on my ability to sell services, right? So I went from learning all the bits and bytes at the internship, going to Accenture, learning the consulting, and then trying to leverage my consulting skills and break into the sales side of things of how I'm actually selling you consulting, selling a customer consulting. That was a big learning curve. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I learned a lot. I was very successful in 2 to 3 years there, and successful in that, I learned a lot of sales skills, right? Learn how to read a stakeholder, or learning if they're really giving you the truth of, are they actually going to buy something from you, or are you wasting my time? Those types of things, how to manage different teams to come together for a solution to present to a customer, a lot of skills to be learned there. And then in 2018, Google reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join the cloud team, the Google Cloud team. And so naturally, I went through the interview process. I was a little skeptical at first, to be honest. It's hard to imagine getting a job at Google when you don't have that job at Google. It's, in the back of your mind, can I really actually do this? And I was able to, happily and successfully get through the interview process. And I received an offer in late 2017, and I joined January of 2018. I was an account manager when I first joined Google, less salesy and more technical, with a hyper focus on customer experience. So, for example, if Google had an outage, right, what are the communications? How are you communicating with your customer? How are you dealing with them who they're spending thousands and millions of dollars with you, and you have an outage, right? Like, how do you communicate that? What is the protocols there? Not so glamorous at first. Just trying to understand a little bit more about cloud. It was still very early in Google Cloud's days, of like how we should operate, right, as a company. But that quickly evolved. Cloud grew significantly. And then I now, kind of have evolved my role a bit. It's no more technical customer facing. It's customer facing, but it's not as technical. And it actually is more putting my sales hat back on. So I lead our retail customers. So your Home Depots of the world, Colgate's, McDonald's, right? These are companies that have come on record to say they're working with Google. Google Cloud specifically, I lead that team, right? Those couple of accounts, and my role specifically is to structure services that make sense for them, right? So they've got business problems that they're looking to solve. We have a cloud that could help solve those problems, but how do we actually, bridge that gap between what they need and what we offer, and who actually designs it and builds it? That's what my team is responsible for. So yes, we have a sales number, right? So we do need to hit that. We need to think about that, but it's really about doing what's right for the customer when it comes to, understanding their problems and understanding what we have on the truck, so to speak, to actually build that and solve it for them.
You did take me on your career journey, and I really loved it. It felt like I was on the way observing as to like, okay, you're at Accenture, learning consulting. It's like there's so much going on, and it's like there's so many skills that you're learning and developing. Could you tell me some skills that you developed along the way that bring the most value to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mentioned a few. I'll kind of hit on some of them again, right? So definitely the consulting skills,
Mm.
being able to manage customers and expectations, as crazy as those expectations may be,
Right.
tempering the expectations, right? And making sure that you're ultimately delivering what needs to be delivered, whether you committed to it or whether a customer's expectations are aligned or misaligned, right? Making sure that you can navigate in that world of what we call here at Google, a little bit of ambiguity, right? How do you navigate that? So I think consulting skills, for sure, one of them. I got that from Accenture, but I've continued to build it throughout the career. Sales is another big one. A lot of people, may second guess themselves and say, I'm not a salesperson. They think of like the used car salesman, kind of vision. And that's not what I want for myself. And I would ask you to kind of double click that, do a little bit of soul searching into yourself, because sales really, if you boil it down at the end of the day, it's being able to convey value about something. So whether
Mm.
you're building something or whether your company has a solution for something that may be unique or niche or new, um, can you convey the value of it to a customer? If you can, then sales might be something you want to think about. There's a lot of upside with sales. What do I mean by that? Is you can make a lot of money. Not so much, my role, we're capped. It's a little bit different, but there's a lot of money to be made if you can sell something in the industry, right? So that is a undervalued, I think, skill, to be able to
Mm.
do that and read stake. I mean, there's a couple things that go along with that. I mentioned, right? Reading people a little bit, understanding how to shape a deal for a customer. So sales would be the second one. The third one is for sure, it has to be networking in this day and age, right? Making connections with people. And, there's books written about it. I've read a few books on how to network best, and they all start off with, I'm sure you don't like to network and you got to force yourself to do it. And, it comes naturally to some people. It doesn't come naturally to me, but it is something that I've come up with a little bit of a systematic way that I work, I use to network. And, there's this concept of loose ties, if anyone's ever heard of that. Loose ties are basically like, hey, maybe it's not your best friend, but you could easily reach out to them. It wouldn't be awkward because you've spoken with them somewhat recently. And you can either ask a favor, ask their opinion, offer something to them. Hey, I'm just thinking about you. I came across this just thinking about you. And then that, to me, right, if you are in need of something, and generally in corporate America, you are, right, you need to get people together, you need teams, you need opinions, you need, some thoughts on how to do something. Having those loose ties is going to be key for really being successful, quite honestly. I've got a little black book of people that I like to check in on, quite honestly, and that's someone that, I'm doing that either maybe once a quarter, just saying, hey, well, I the people I put in my little black book, it's people that I can very easily see value or see myself learning something from. These are people that are usually either leaders or maybe they're smarter in a given subject than I am, and I feel like I could gravitate and maybe learn something. So, I'll put you in this little spreadsheet that I have, and I'm making sure I check it out, checking in with you and checking up with you, just on a personal level or even at a professional level, to continue building those loose ties. Because, you get into these corporations where there's literally, Google is 100,000 employees strong. You like to think you're not a number on a spreadsheet, and there's good efforts to make sure that you don't feel that way. But at the same time, you do need to, the old saying, right? Your net worth is your network. And being able to reach out to somebody that knows something very specific or niche or has done something before in the past, being able to call on them, and it's like I said, it's not awkward. It's like, hey, you're picking up where you left off on your last project when you first got introduced to them. It's really helpful. So long-winded here, right? So that's three that, as far as networking goes. The last one I would just say is critical thinking, and this is also somewhat, I had to train myself a little bit to do this. But at the end of the day, I take a few minutes to reflect and say, like, what went really well today? Maybe I don't do that every day, but certainly once a week, right? What went well this week? What did I get sucked into from what did most of my time go to this week? Sucked into may sound like negative, but maybe it's negative, but maybe it's something positive I got pulled into. So, try to just do a little bit of reflection there. Look at your calendar. Who are you meeting with this week? Is it people that, are your peers? Are you meeting with leadership regularly? And just try to think what you would change, what you would do better. My wife laughs. She says I'm a little bit overcritical of my calendar, but I really truly do try to measure, a lot of never my weekend, but certainly my work week down to, 15-minute time slots, quite literally. If somebody wants to speak with me, I'm happy to do it if time allows, right? I've got things that I've got to get done. So I manage the calendar, but I look back on that calendar, getting back to critical thinking. I look back on that calendar and I try to see what I could do differently, what I can optimize. And that, continuing to do that self-reflection, that helps you kind of prioritize things and make you mentally prepared to try and get into different areas or different things or try new things and grow yourself. So I guess I'll summarize it. The consulting skills, the sales skills, learning sales abilities, networking with people, coworkers, your current job, a past job, right? LinkedIn's great for that, by the way. And critical thinking, try and do a little bit of reflection towards the end of your day or week and think what you might want to consider doing differently or continue doing more of.
Absolutely. I did. I really liked how you like pointed out to the importance of every skill. I mean, especially about networking, consulting, and being able to reflect is a huge skill. I mean, what worked, what didn't work, because I do that personally too. I will look back on like every Friday or Saturday. I'm like, okay, just looking at my calendar, what worked, what didn't work, what could I have what could have been better, and just writing it all down. And I'm being like, okay, next week, let's work on this specifically. That that makes a huge difference because it's you're improving 1% every day or every week. And
Absolutely. I'll maybe add to that as well, right? If you're working on something that in the consulting world, you're trained to estimate a lot of things, right? Like how many hours is this going to take? How many people do we need for this? I do that on a much smaller scale as well with myself, right? So if I know there's something big coming up or I know I need to carve out the time to work on something, I'll ask myself, do I need 30 minutes for this? Could I, scrap something together really quickly? Do I need an hour and a half to really put together maybe a full-blown presentation on how we would navigate this or an idea for senior leadership? And I will absolutely block off my calendar maybe for an hour and a half next week, right? Just to focus on something, because I know that if I don't, if you don't make your calendar, others will make it for you. And that may sound kind of negative, that people are just trying to take your time. It's not that, right? It's really making sure that you are prioritizing what you need to get done. How do you, yes, how do you better your team, but how are you also making sure that you are adding value and growing yourself within an organization? So just figure I'd throw that in there as well.
yeah, I love it. So the last part of this interview is the question of asking, what advice would you give to a student that is struggling right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're a student and you're struggling with the workload or IT in general, do a little bit of soul searching and, try and determine if this is the right field for you. So the workload, that's going to come and go, right? You've only got 4 years, maybe if you're on an extended plan, right? Maybe a little bit longer, but keep going, right? If IT is right for you and you feel like this is an industry that you're passionate about, you want to learn more, you think it's cool, you're reading up on just naturally like what's happening in the industry, keep going, right? Keep going. It's good. Some semesters are going to be a lot harder than others. For me, my junior year, second semester was really, really challenging. And then, it gets a little bit easier and then it gets a little bit harder again. So just keep going, focus less on changing your major, right? Don't, my advice and unsolicited. So Chris Scalgione's feedback, right? Try not to obsess too much over, finding the right exact major, right? And really just try and get through it if you feel that IT is a fit for you. And the reason I say that is because IT is so broad. So if you're taking a class and it's on coding, right? For me, I'm not a coder, right? I'm a more, you heard, from my speech above, I'm a more on the sales side of things. Sales and coding generally just don't coexist, right? If you're a salesperson, you're not coding,
Right.
for the most part. So, that was a real challenge for me, but I got through it, right? I got help from some of my peers at the time, got through it. And, that just an IT degree opens the door for quite a lot of different internships and areas that you may want to get into. And then from there, you can always branch out and figure out and say, hey, I really like security, right? Or encryption. I want to do more with security. There's a whole field for that. Hey, I really like cloud, right? There's a whole industry built around cloud. I really want to get into AI. That's this brand new thing. What is it? No, everyone's trying to figure it out. That's a whole nother, kind of trend right now. So, yes, it all boils down to, silicon and electrons and processors and all that kind of stuff. So get through the major, maybe a little bit of motivation, try and power through. Because once you get on the other side, if you know this is the right industry for you, there's so many different things that you can get into that will, really kind of fit your passion a bit. The last thing I'll just add to that, if you're struggling with the coursework, this may sound crazy, but if you're able to get any sort of an internship while you're in college, it doesn't have to be anything major. 2 hours a week, 3 hours, great if it's paid. If it's unpaid, sure, take what you can get, right? If it's anything more than just data entry, right? It will help make a little bit more of the coursework more relatable to you, and you can get a little bit more engaged that way. And again, if it's the hours that you're putting into your college, your coursework, and you're just not getting it, an internship might sound really like out of left field. But if it's something you're passionate about, you've done a little soul searching, IT is where you want to be. See if there is some sort of lightweight internship. Again, data entry, not that, but anything beyond that where you can learn from someone that's a little bit more seasoned or they've been in the industry a little bit. Take advantage of that, because when you get into your class, when you get into the coursework, when you crack open the books and it's talking about the concepts, it just makes it a little bit more easier to absorb and digest because you're seeing it in real life. So that's the last thing I'll add to that.
Get an internship, learn from the internship because it'll make classes easier. I like that. It's
Exactly.
and it'll be much more engaging and fun, and you get to show off to that, hey, I learned this in my internship. So
Exactly.
I really like your advice. I mean, it doesn't matter how many hours, but just keep focus on the learning in the internship. I like that. So
Exactly.
that sums up my questions. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you coming for this interview.
No problem. Happy to be here, like I said, and I look forward to working more with you and your team, Jim. And I appreciate the time here today.
Thank
Good
you.
luck to all the to the students that are going through ITI and through Rutgers, and we're pulling for you. There's a whole industry on the other side, and a lot of exciting times ahead. So good luck and get through it.
Thank you.